Lily had never meant to fall asleep. The exhaustion of working double shifts as a cleaning lady had finally caught up to her, and before she knew it, she had dozed off in the luxurious presidential suite's bathroom. The scent of expensive cologne and polished marble filled the air as she stirred awake, only to lock eyes with a man who could end her job in a heartbeat. Dylan Scott, the billionaire CEO himself. A wave of panic surged through her. Would he fire her on the spot? The tension was thick, but instead of anger, curiosity flickered in his sharp blue eyes. Dylan had expected perfection in his five-star hotel, not a sleeping employee in his private suite.
Hello, I'm the storyteller of the channel, and I would like to ask for a second of your time to subscribe, activate the notification bell, and like the video so that YouTube can take our story to more people who are passionate about stories like this. Thank you, and without further ado, let's continue with our story.
But something about Lily intrigued him. Unlike the polished executives he was used to, she wasn't rehearsed. She was raw, real. As he confronted her, she stammered an apology, her voice laced with exhaustion. He could see it, the weight of endless hours, the desperation of someone simply trying to survive. Yet, in the midst of her panic, something unexpected happened. The untouched meal on the table caught her eye, and she muttered something that made him pause. The sauce is off. Too much saffron. It overpowers the truffle. His brow furrowed. How could she know that? The dish had been prepared by one of the top chefs in the city. Dylan challenged her, pushing the plate toward her. She hesitated, but took a bite. Without hesitation, she broke down every imbalance in the dish, her words flowing like a seasoned critic. It wasn't just a guess. She truly understood flavors. This wasn't luck. It was a talent. Dylan had built his empire on instincts, and right now, his instincts told him that Lily was more than just a cleaning lady. Lily felt the weight of his gaze, analyzing her like she was an unsolved mystery. She was nobody, just a girl scrubbing floors for minimum wage, struggling to make ends meet. Yet for the first time in years, someone was actually listening to her. Dylan wasn't dismissing her words. He wasn't mocking her. Instead, he seemed intrigued. It was absurd. A billionaire CEO intrigued by a hotel cleaner? This had to be a cruel joke. Any second now, he'd laugh, wave her off, and tell her to pack her things. But he didn't. Instead, Dylan leaned back, a smirk forming. Interesting, he murmured, steepling his fingers. Tell me more. Lily's pulse pounded. Was this a test? A trick? Yet, she found herself speaking, explaining how flavors work together, how balance in a dish was everything. The more she spoke, the more his interest grew. It was like something inside her had been locked away for years, and now, with every word, it was breaking free. She wasn't just a cleaner. She was someone with a voice. And Dylan was listening. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then, Dylan did something that left her speechless. He didn't fire her. He didn't scold her. Instead, he made a call. Within moments, the head chef was summoned, and Lily found herself standing before him as Dylan relayed her critique. The chef scoffed, but Dylan's expression was unreadable. Taste it, he instructed. Reluctantly, the chef took a bite. His face paled. Lily had been right. Dylan's gaze never left her. There was something about Lily, something that went beyond the scent of bleach on her uniform or the exhaustion in her eyes. She had a gift, and in that moment, he made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. You're not fired, he said, his voice firm. You're reassigned. Lily's breath caught. Reassigned? To what? She had no idea what he meant, but as she looked into his eyes, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Lily couldn't believe what was happening. One moment, she was scrubbing floors, and the next, she was sitting across from the billionaire CEO, being told she had a new role. It felt like a dream, or maybe a trick. But Dylan Scott wasn't the kind of man to joke about business. He saw something in her, something even she had never acknowledged. You have a talent, Lily, he said, his voice firm. And I don't waste talent. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Could this really be happening? The hotel staff, however, didn't share Dylan's enthusiasm. A cleaning lady suddenly being given a say in their high-class kitchen? It was absurd. Whispers spread like wildfire. The chef scoffed, the servers exchanged glances, and the managers questioned Dylan's decision. "She's not trained," one of them argued. "She's just a janitor." But Dylan wasn't interested in their doubts. "Then let her prove herself," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. And just like that, Lily found herself standing in the middle of the hotel's grand kitchen, facing a room full of skeptical eyes. The first challenge came fast. A new dish was being tested for the VIP menu, and Dylan wanted Lily's opinion. The head chef smirked, clearly expecting her to embarrass herself. But as soon as she took a bite, everything faded: the noise, the judgment, the doubts. She closed her eyes, letting the flavors unfold in her mind. Too much acidity. The balance was off. The finish was too heavy. Without hesitation, she pointed out every flaw, backing her words with sharp reasoning. When she opened her eyes, the room was silent. Dylan watched with amusement as the chef's expression shifted from smug to stunned. Lily had nailed every issue, pinpointing the exact problem areas in a dish designed by one of the most experienced professionals in the industry. "Fix it," Dylan ordered, turning to the team. And just like that, the power dynamic shifted. Lily wasn't just a cleaning lady anymore. She was a force they couldn't ignore. But respect wasn't earned in a day. The chefs still resented her presence. They still saw her as an outsider. Days turned into weeks, and the challenges kept coming. Mistakes were made, lessons were learned, and Lily found herself growing in ways she never imagined. But the hardest part wasn't the work itself. It was the constant need to prove that she belonged. Every time she spoke, she felt the weight of their doubt, the unspoken belief that she didn't deserve to be there. But she refused to let it break her. If they thought she would back down, they didn't know who they were dealing with. Dylan, on the other hand, was watching closely. He saw her struggle, but more importantly, he saw her fight. There was something about her resilience that fascinated him. She wasn't just good, she was extraordinary. And as he observed her in action, an idea began to form in his mind. The hotel wasn't big enough for what she could do. Her gift deserved a stage far greater than this. He leaned back, a smirk playing on his lips. "It's time to take this to the next level," he murmured to himself. And so, without warning, Dylan made his next move. He walked into the kitchen, all eyes turning to him as he made his announcement. "Lily, pack your bags," he said, his voice unwavering. "We're going to Paris." Gasps echoed through the kitchen. Lily froze. Paris? The culinary capital of the world? Panic and excitement warred inside her. She had barely found her footing here. How could she possibly handle something that big? But the look in Dylan's eyes told her there was no turning back. This was happening. Lily had never even dreamed of stepping foot in Paris. And yet, here she was, staring out of the airplane window as the city of lights unfolded beneath her. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and terror. This wasn't just a trip, it was a test. Dylan had pulled every string necessary to get her access to one of the most exclusive culinary events in the world. She was about to stand among the best chefs, critics, and connoisseurs, and she wasn't sure if she belonged. "Breathe," Dylan's voice pulled her back. "You're not here by accident." The moment they arrived at the grand event, the reality of her situation hit her like a tidal wave. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, cameras flashed, and the scent of the finest cuisine filled the air. The elite of the culinary world moved gracefully through the room, each of them exuding an air of confidence that made Lily feel like an imposter. She tugged at the borrowed designer dress Dylan had insisted she wear, feeling like a fraud in silk. But there was no turning back. She was here, and she had to prove she was more than just a cleaning lady with a sharp tongue. It didn't take long for the murmurs to begin. People recognized Dylan Scott immediately, but Lily? She was an anomaly. Who is she? They whispered behind their champagne glasses. His new girlfriend? A social experiment. The judgment in their eyes was suffocating, but Dylan remained unfazed. He led her to the main tasting hall, where dishes from world-renowned chefs were being critiqued. "Go on," he encouraged, gesturing to a plate. "Do what you do best." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the fork. The first bite was everything. It was like stepping into another dimension, layers of flavor unraveling in her mind, each one whispering secrets only she could hear. She chewed slowly, analyzing, dissecting, understanding. Then she spoke. Her critique was precise, her words unwavering. A few people chuckled at first, amused by the audacity of an unknown woman daring to challenge the masters. But then, something unexpected happened. A famous chef leaned in, listening. Then another, and another. The room, once filled with quiet skepticism, began to hum with curiosity. One by one, the dishes came, and Lily didn't hold back. She pointed out imbalances, praised perfection, and suggested adjustments that made even the most seasoned chefs nod in approval. The whispers changed tone. It was no longer, "Who is she?" but "How does she know that?" Dylan stood beside her, his smirk growing with every shocked expression in the room. She was proving herself in real time, not because of connections or a fancy title, but because her talent was undeniable. Then, the ultimate test arrived. The head judge, an intimidating legend in the industry, approached with a plate. "If you're as good as they say, tell me what's missing." The challenge was clear: one wrong answer, and she'd be dismissed as a fraud. Lily took a deep breath and tasted. The flavors unfolded, complex and layered, but something wasn't right. Her brows furrowed, and then she knew. It needs a hint of smoked paprika. "Just a touch," she said, her voice steady. The judge's eyes widened slightly. He turned to the chef, who nodded. She was right. The room erupted in murmurs, but Dylan didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Lily had just done the impossible. She had walked in the most elite culinary gathering as a nobody and walked out as someone they would never forget. But as the night drew to a close, she felt the weight of what had just happened. She had won their respect, but at what cost? Dylan's eyes met hers across the room, and for the first time, she saw something deeper than intrigue, something more dangerous. This wasn't just about food anymore. Lily had spent her entire life keeping her guard up, but Dylan was making that impossible. After Paris, everything changed. Their late-night conversations became longer, his glances lingered, and the air between them felt charged with something unspoken. She tried to ignore it. He was Dylan Scott, billionaire, hotel mogul, a man so far out of her league, it was laughable. And yet, when he leaned in just a little too close, when his hand brushed hers absent-mindedly, it felt like the world around them blurred, leaving only the two of them. But reality had a cruel way of reminding her where she stood. The hotel's elite staff, the media, even some of Dylan's closest business associates, none of them were blind to what was happening. And they didn't approve. "She's just an employee," the whispers grew louder. "This won't last." Then came the headlines. Billionaire CEO's new pet project, or something more. Lily felt the weight of judgment pressing in from all sides. But the worst part? She wasn't sure where Dylan stood. He had pulled her into his world, but had he truly let her in? Then came Alina, tall, elegant, and utterly composed. Dylan's ex-fiancée was the kind of woman who belonged in his world. The kind of woman who made Lily feel like a joke. "You don't actually think this is real, do you?" Melina's voice was like honey laced with poison. Dylan gets bored easily. He loves a challenge, but when a novelty fades, he always goes back to what he knows. The words sliced deep, igniting a fear Lily had buried. What if she was right? What if she was just another game for him? Doubt seeped into her bones. Every stolen glance, every lingering touch. Was it all just another experiment for a man who had everything? The uncertainty clawed at her until she couldn't take it anymore. One night, when the whispers became too loud and her own insecurities screamed in agreement, she made a decision. She packed her bags. She would leave before he had the chance to push her aside, before she became another name in a long list of people he had outgrown. But Dylan wasn't about to let that happen. He found her at the hotel's entrance, her suitcase in hand, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Running away? His voice was calm, but there was something in it, something raw. Lily couldn't meet his gaze. I don't belong here, Dylan." Silence stretched between them. And then, he did something she never expected. He He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers, anchoring her in place. "You belong with me." The words shattered every defense she had left. Dylan wasn't a man who spoke without meaning. He wasn't the type to chase. And yet, here he was, holding on to her like she was the most important thing in his world. "I don't care what they say. I don't care about the past, the headlines, or the rules. I only care about you." His voice was steady, his eyes locked onto hers. And in that moment, Lily realized something. She had spent her whole life afraid of taking up space, afraid of not being enough. But to him, she was everything. For the first time, she let herself believe it. She let herself fall. But love, especially love under a spotlight, was never simple. The world wasn't done testing them, and neither was fate. The storm hit harder than either of them expected. The media twisted their story, painting Lily as a gold digger and Dylan as a reckless billionaire blinded by infatuation. Every news outlet had its own version of events, but the underlying message was the same: Lily didn't belong. The pressure was relentless. Business partners raised concerns, investors whispered about instability, and hotel executives questioned Dylan's judgment. But the real blow came when one of the hotel's biggest clients threatened to pull out, citing the scandal as a reason. Dylan didn't flinch. Instead, he did what no one expected. He took a stand. At a high-profile press conference, with cameras flashing and reporters eager for his downfall, he silenced them all with a single statement: "Lily is the most talented person I've ever met. And if anyone here thinks I'd let go of someone with her brilliance because of petty gossip, then they don't know me at all." His words sent shockwaves through the industry. He wasn't just defending her. He was making it clear that she was a force to be reckoned with. But Dylan didn't stop there. He made a bold move, one that would redefine both of their lives. He stepped down from his position as CEO of the hotel chain he built from the ground up. The world gasped. His competitors called it reckless. His critics called it a mistake. But to him, it was the beginning of something greater. "We're building something new," he told Lily. "And I want you to build it with me. A restaurant, a vision, a legacy. Not just his, but theirs. Together." The journey wasn't easy. The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than ever. They faced sabotage, betrayal, and moments where everything seemed on the verge of collapse. But through it all, Dylan and Lily stood side by side. Every challenge they faced only made them stronger. And when their restaurant finally opened its doors, it wasn't just a place for fine dining. It was a statement, a testament to resilience, to breaking barriers, to rewriting the rules. And people noticed. The same industry that once mocked her was now lining up to taste her creations. Success, however, wasn't the only surprise waiting for them. One morning, as sunlight streamed through their bedroom window, Lily hesitated before speaking. "Dylan, I think I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, delicate yet powerful. For the first time, she saw something in Dylan's eyes she had never seen before. Pure, unfiltered emotion. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. They had built an empire together. Now, they were about to build a family. Their love story had begun in the most unlikely of places: a hotel bathroom, a moment of exhaustion, a single bite of food. But life had a way of crafting the most extraordinary tales from the simplest of beginnings. And as they stood together, hand in hand, looking at the life they had built, one thing was clear: this was just the beginning.